Today's episode will feature 3 games that I actually played back in the olden days, and a couple of games that I got into later on. Our first game, Golden Axe, is a Sega in-house arcade classic from 1989, which I first bumped into on the Commodore 64, but didn't really get to properly enjoy until I played it on the Mega Drive a couple of years after that unfortunate introduction. I always thought of Golden Axe as a side-scrolling beat-em-up version of Gauntlet, without the wizard as an optional character. You do get to choose your characters from an axe-wielding dwarf, a sword-wielding Amazonian woman, and another sword-wielding character, a barbarian. Each of the characters have some special magical abilities, as well as their own background stories, but they all conclude in an epic battle against the final villain, Blackout. Oh, sorry, that's Death Adder. I always get them mixed up. Well, as it happens, the Mega Drive and PC versions add another last true final boss called Deathbringer, which sounds kind of more appropriate for the occasion, even though it also sounds like a cheap B-movie title from the 80s. I've never played Golden Axe that far on any platform, but I do think the game feels perfectly at home on the Mega Drive. As these things usually go, Golden Axe is better experienced as a multiplayer game. And again, thanks to SJ for the help getting the multiplayer footage. Another multiplayer arcade game, although of a considerably different ilk, that always felt like a Mega Drive game to me, was Bonanza Bros, originally released for the arcades in 1990, but brought to Mega Drive and other home systems in 1991. I first came across this game through one of the rare imported gaming magazines that I managed to come across in the early 90s, though I think the review there was for the Atari ST or Commodore Amiga version. Seeing a side-scrolling combined 2D/3D stealth action platformer with equally retro-esque and contemporary feel somehow made me instantly intrigued about this game, but the reviewers weren't exactly praising this game to the heavens. Instead, it was made clear that this was a Sega native, and best experienced as such. Well, it did take me a while to get to play this game, and even then it was mostly thanks to emulation. This time I actually played the Mega Drive version first, before eventually getting disappointed yet again in the C64 version, which somehow made its way into my collection before the Mega Drive version did. Every time I played Bonanza Bros, it was instantly clear that the game would work best as a cooperative 2-player game, which makes this recording the first time I ever got to play the game as intended. And I was right. The idea is to collect all the items from each building and then move on to the exit platform, wherever it may be. In the 2-player mode, you can choose to go through different parts of the buildings, even though you still might have to follow the same route to the exit as the other player. Bonanza Bros has a rather steep difficulty curve, beginning with an easy mission and then moving on to an already much more difficult and complex building for the second one, and each new mission seems to have a new feature of some sort. Once you get comfortable with the game's little special quirks, it becomes a fantastically enjoyable co-op game, although there is no reason why it should not be also enjoyed as a solo game. Amidst of all the usual Sega classics, Bonanza Bros is a criminally underrated game that I feel should be talked about more. The inevitable puzzle game of this episode is one that I first got to play on the Amiga, where Blockout was released by California Dreams in 1989, which is 2 years prior to the Electronic Arts published Mega Drive version. The reason why I chose to select Blockout for this Sega episode, however, is because I've played it more on my Mega Drive, because it runs slightly faster, making it somewhat more comfortable to play. Also, it helps that it's more instantaneous of an experience compared to disc loading, when the game doesn't differ all that much to make a difference. Too bad the artwork on the European cartridge is some of the most hideous I've seen so far, but it's a minor complaint since you're not supposed to be looking at the cartridge while playing anyway. If you know your Tetris variants, then you will already have been aware that Blockout is basically the best known 3D rendition of Tetris, with the viewpoint being straight from the top of the well. It runs slower than your regular Tetris by default simply because it's that much more difficult getting your head around the way the blocks settle themselves, as there are 3 axes to turn the blocks around, so you need more time to move things to your liking. Particularly when you're playing Blockout for the first time in ages, this sedateness is surprisingly helpful. When you do get into the logic and rhythm of the game, however, the slow start does feel a bit forced, but that's why you have the level selector in the game options. There is a 2-player mode in Blockout, which frankly doesn't make sense, since there is neither a cooperative mode or a properly competitive mode available, just 2 wells shown side by side, and whoever finishes last wins. Not a particularly useful feature to have in a puzzle game, but it's there if you like to compare skills with friends. Blockout was released on as many platforms as you could possibly ever need to, though not nearly as many as the actual Tetris. Still, it's easy enough to find wherever you want to find it on, and I do highly recommend it to any Tetris fan. I just happen to prefer the Megadrive version. The third part in Sega's famous Shinobi series, the Revenge of Shinobi from 1989, came into my life no less than 11 years ago when it was introduced to me by my fiancée, so this is more her nostalgia trip game than mine. Then again, it's not far from my own nostalgia trip games, since the previous 2 Shinobi games were definitely part of my youth, even if not a particularly prevalent part, and this is a natural continuation of that. The usual Shinobi gameplay style is kept as in the previous 2 installations, meaning that you can jump around, throw shuriken from a distance, and use melee weapons from close range. Instead of having a wolf dog to accompany you in the style of Shadow Dancer, Shinobi goes back to working solo, but now he's working with many powerful special ninjutsu abilities such as super jumps, shields, and a summoning of flames. However, the special abilities are always selected prior to starting a level, so you must make do each time with your selection. I don't remember having ever passed the 3rd level in the game, but then I really haven't played The Revenge of Shinobi to claim any real expertise in it. It is a properly good game though, and well deserving of its place in the series. Unlike the 2 previous Shinobi games though, this one was originally only released on the Megadrive, or Genesis, oddly enough before the second game, Shadow Dancer, ever even got ported to the Megadrive. I suppose there's some sort of a logic there. We end this episode with a game that I had no particular connection to before I bought it some 15 years ago. Jungle Strike from Electronic Arts 1993 is the first of many sequels to their earlier non-linear helicopter shooter Desert Strike, which parodied the Gulf War and which is yet to make its appearance in my Amiga nostalgia trip list. Jungle Strike not only took the concept to a greener setting, but also added more vehicles to use. The first set of missions is played solely with your trusty helicopter though, and the area is an approximation of Washington DC, where you must learn to navigate the more concretious jungle before taking off elsewhere in the world. This tutorial puts you through a proper test, since you need to destroy a wide variety of terrorist entities all over the city, from bazooka-wielding foot soldiers to tanks and suicide-bombing cars. You only have 3 lives to complete this section in, and you also need to keep an eye on your fuel and ammunition, all of which can be collected from certain designated places. It is harder than you might think at first, and certainly more time-consuming than you would think a first section would take, but for a game that offers this serious a challenge, it is good practice. You get to control different vehicles in the second area, which has more water than land, so the first thing you get to control after the initial helicopter is a hovercraft. There's a good deal of variety in Jungle Strike once you get past the first pack of missions, and once you get comfortable with the controls and the map reading, it becomes hugely addicting. Personally, I could enjoy this game a lot more as I did Desert Strike on the Amiga back in the day, but for some reason I never seem to have any real time to put into any single game these days. I wonder why. For those of you who do have some time, Jungle Strike is an easy recommendation to any Sega gamer.